Hi all, just as a little bit of a spin-off for Boleslavsky example games, because personally he means quite a bit to me from the game 3 of the most instructive games of chess ever played. So he was actually one of the top players between 1945 and 50, but even later on he was a very dangerous player. Later on, Mikhail Tal emerged as a great force, of course, especially because he challenged Mikhail Botvinnik for the world title in 1960 successfully. And just going to briefly jump ahead, but then go back to the 50s. In 1958, Mikhail Tal was playing against Boleslavsky. Let's see what happened in this game. D4 from Mikhail Tal. We have knight f6, c4, g6, going into the king's engine defense. So we have here a Simish variation from Mikhail Tal. Black castled, bishop e3. Then we have e5, d5, and this is slightly controversial. I'm not sure this is a main move or anything. It's c5. It does block the queen side against maybe a c5 later from white, but it does give white a kind of free hand here on the king side. We have g4. This is quite a good grip against any potential f5. It'll be with a compromise usually. If black wants to try for f5, he could be exposing his own king down the g file. But nevertheless, Boleslavsky goes for this ambitious idea. He plays knight e8 with the idea of f5. Black, really in the king's engine defense, wants to try and liberate this bishop. Mikhail Tal just plays h4. It's ruthless stuff. And with this attitude, he did actually win the whole tournament here, the USSR 1958 tournament. It was one of his most amazing victories on the lead up to the 1960 match. So a very feared player, playing very, very aggressively. f5. Not fearing the g file. And against Mikhail Tal as well. G takes, g takes, and white now plays e takes f5. Sometimes this is very useful to get a grip on the light squares, and e4 in particular. Bishop takes f5, bishop d3. Now here, black's bid for dynamic play is carried on, unleashing this bishop on the diagonal with this pawn sack e4. After f takes e4, the point is queen e7 with a pin on e3, and black immediately now threatens bishop takes c3 and bishop e4 takes e4. An interesting and very, very good decision for Mikhail Tal technically. He plays e takes f5, not fearing queen takes e3 and the dark square bishop and dark square play in general, because of the check queen e2, white has an extra pawn here as well as a solid grip on e6 potentially. Queen g3 check, king d2. Technically white is better in this position because look at that g file. We have knight c7, trying to connect rooks potentially. All the pieces, a lot of the pieces on the first rank here. Now here, a slight inaccuracy it seems. Knight c7 does have potential ideas to try and undermine the center with b5, and in this light perhaps white should pursue an attack with a move like knight h3, which takes away of course the f4 square and means that the rook can come here and pin this bishop, and this would be technically in white's favor, but perhaps a little bit overconfident here. We have queen h2. It's not giving black too much choice here because it's looking at d6 as well. If the queen could move away, doesn't really want to anyway. So we have the exchange of queens. Has black got enough here? Has he got enough play? Is it just a miserable position? He's a pawn down. Knight d7. It seems of course black has got a nice grip on the e5 square and no counterpart bishop, so playing on the dark squares could be useful, but we have knight e5. This is not threatened, though, knight takes d6, because there'll be bishop e5. Potentially if it wasn't for the check. But in this regard, it's set up as bait with king h8. So now there's no check if knight takes d6. Bishop e5, there's no check. That would be winning material. So this is indirectly defended. Okay, we have rook g2. And now, a weakness of the last move, in fact, the knight was covering against b5. But on e4, although slightly impressive on d6, it has neglected b5, and black seizes the opportunity to try and blow the center up. This is typical King's Indian defense and hypermodern strategy in general. Let the opponent occupy the center to try and blow it up later. And we see this move, b5 now. Obviously, from examples we've seen so far, Boleslavsky is often playing very well the pawn down. He's often getting good compensation. Is there compensation here? Well, clearly this bishop is very, very nice. Very, very nice. Black couldn't have taken that pawn because the rook would just crash down to the 7th. But now this might be on the cards at some point. But for the moment, knight f3 is still offering this pawn. It's too dangerous here to take it, it seems. We have b takes, bishop takes c4, weakening d5 a little bit. It's clung on to by the bishop. Now rook a b8, threatening rook takes b2 check is more effective than taking the bishop. That's protected. Rook takes f5. Yes, this pawn has been weak for some time now. Knight f g5. Going in potentially to e6, but black does not worry about that. Knight e5, again exploiting the knight's leaving control of e5. That knight pounces to hit c4. Bishop b3. And bishop's the only thing defending d5. c4 taking it away from that d5 pawn. Bishop c2. Knight takes d5. Knight takes d6, discovering an attack on the rook, as well as knight takes f5. The rook moves, hitting the knight. And we have a picturesque position here. It's been noted actually in the comments at chessgames.com. We have 4 knights in a row. Kind of a strange one. Aesthetically interesting, perhaps. 4 knights in a row here. What is going on? The center has been blown. It can be argued here that white's king is more unsafe than black's king now. We see rook d8. Threatening nasty discovered check, knight f4 check. The king moves. Knight f4 anyway, hitting the rook. And both knights eye d3. And that will dislocate the bishop from f5 now. It was dislocated from d5 and now it's going to be dislocated from f5. We have rook g3, knight fd3 check, basically forcing the win of material because otherwise rook takes f5. What a disaster for Mikhail Tal this game has been now. Bishop takes, knight takes, black is going to take here, so white is forced to sack the exchange. The exchange down here, the knights do not provide too much compensation. The fianchettoed bishop is taken off. But this position, pardon me, is difficult. It's difficult to play. The exchange down for white, pinning the knight. A bit of toying here. Check. Rook d4, hitting h4, hitting the rook retreats. Knight e4, rook e6. We have check. King f8, rook g4. Now black switches his attention to the queen side for a moment with rook a6, h5. This is a slight weakness. If white could get in rook g6, sure that'd be good. But rook a5 hitting that pawn, and this is getting a little bit dangerous now. Well, things are starting to come off. Rook takes h5. Check. Pinning the knight. Pinning like this. And this is winning now because black can easily simplify into a winning king and pawn ending in this position, if nothing else. White actually resigned. Mikhail Tal resigned here. Let's see if king e5. Black could just take everything off, and this is a winning king and pawn ending. King's going to just come up and munch this pawn, etc. Very easy to win that. A little bit controversial. It wasn't a clear cut. Black was in trouble. It wasn't a clear cut win. White could have improved clearly with knight h3, but credit to Boleslavsky, still dangerous in 1958. It seems he was at the top of his game between 1945 and 50, and later wanted to become more of a coach than challenge to become world champion or anything. But clearly he was in the running in the 1945 to 50 years, and I would personally like to look at some more of his games, because he's actually one of my personal favourites for the knight on d5 game. So I'm afraid this is a personal bias as well to investigate him for a few more game examples. I hope you don't mind and enjoy the ride here. I think it's nice to explore some of the lesser known players in the history of the game. Just because someone didn't become world champion doesn't mean they're not a very, very exciting player to look at. And I think this is one example. He's actually got a plus score against Mikhail Tal. He actually beat him in a very long game with the white pieces as well. But to beat Mikhail Tal with the black pieces, with the king's Indian defense, that's, I think, an impressive achievement here in this game. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.